Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's hearing. Climate change is one of the most urgent matters of our generation. 27 years ago, I was proud to champion the Environmental Justice Act with then Senator Al Gore. I believed then what I know to be true today. Clean air, clean water, a right and not a privilege. We have a right to know what is in the food we eat, what is in the water we drink, and what is in the air we breathe. Each and every one of us must cherish this planet, for it is likely the only home we will ever know. Combating climate change is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It is the question of preserving this little piece of real estate that we call Earth for generations yet unborn. Together we can solve this problem, but time is of the essence. Congress cannot stand on the sidelines. We have a moral responsibility to lead, and the time to act is now. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit a report conducted by the NAACP, Clean Air Task Force, and the National Medical Association on the health impacts of pollution on African American communities.
So ordered.
Thank you. Mr. Hastad, I have a simple question. The impact of climate change costs taxpayers billions and billions of dollars. Do you have ideas on how to change the tax code might help us combat climate change and support those on the front line of the environmental justice movement?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Economists agree that the more you price something, the less of it you get. We all want fewer carbon emissions. The tax code is actually the most cost-effective way to solve the climate problem. I also want to make clear that I am a climate conservative. What makes me a climate conservative is that I believe that a market-based solution is more effective than a regulatory solution. All economists would agree on that. However, it is possible to do this in a way that is highly equitable. Our plan would make 70% of American families economically better off, including the most vulnerable Americans. It would also achieve far higher emissions reductions than any past climate regulation combined. So in short, yes, the tax code can help in solving the climate problem by substituting a high price on carbon for regulations.
Well, thank you. Dr. Java, I also have a question for you. What may Congress do to curb the negative health outcomes of climate change on minority and poor communities?
Congressman, thank you for that question. As you know, poor and minority communities in America disproportionately suffer from poor environmental conditions. The report that you mentioned found that African Americans in this country breathe air that's 50% more polluted than non-African Americans. So fundamentally, climate change and burning of fossil fuels is not just a general health issue, but it is a health issue that disproportionately affects poor communities and communities of color across the country. So the first thing we need to do is enable a transition away from dirty fuels that cause these emissions. So we've been talking a lot about climate change and carbon as a way to increase temperatures on the planet. But burning of fossil fuels has all sorts of other byproducts. And so what we see in communities, especially communities of color, is where you have more traffic, more diesel, more of these environmental pollutants. You see more effects on kids with asthma. You see more effects on elderly people getting admitted for respiratory and cardiovascular conditions. And so the first order of business is to try to get our economy off of burning fossil fuels and towards clean energy. That will have a beneficial effect for all Americans, but I think it will have a disproportionate effect for communities of color.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, are you back?
Thank the gentleman.